Everyone, welcome. I really appreciate you all being here tonight. I'm Barbara Dobbin. I'm the president of the North Highland and co-president of the Area Council. We have our meetings here. This will be the night of our regular meeting, the first Thursday of every month. And so instead we're having this great information forum. This is not a debate. People are here to give us the facts about the Burien annexation. And just some housekeeping. There's bathrooms through that door. We have refreshments here, cookies, help yourself. And as I said, I just want a little plug for NEWAC. Our meetings are the first Thursday of every month. We are a group that brings information from the county to the community. You can always get in touch with us if you have some pressing issue. We can try to get the county people here to discuss it. And our next meeting is November 1st, Thursday, November 1st. We will have the roads department here talking about some cuts to our roads. So you might want to come and hear about that. So anyway, I would like to introduce, we're so pleased to have this great panel here tonight. And we have Senator Sharon Nelson here with us tonight. And Karen Freeman, policy analyst with the King County Executive Office. Mike Martin, Burien City Manager. Fire Chief Mike Mars, who's the Fire Chief for Burien.
Yes.
So I just changed the name. Burien and Normandy Park, and the acting fire chief for North Highland. Captain Carl Coe from the Burien Police Department. And last but not last, but Joe McDermott from our favorite King County Council. Our Sheriff Department Steve Strand here, and he will speak as well tonight. So I ask that everyone hold applause after each person speaks to the end. And what we're going to do is, and I also, if anyone needs paper, I'll be happy to pass out paper if you want to take notes, if you didn't bring any with you. I have pens up here as well. And we're asking that people save your questions till the end, and then direct them to the person that you want to ask. So you might want to take notes. If anyone needs paper, I'll be happy to pass paper out. And anyway, without further ado, we'll start. And our first speaker tonight will be Karen Freeman.
So, thank you, Barbara.
Barbara, can I move this?
Can you? Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to be quick because you got a lot of important people who have been working on this for a long time. But I thought I'd just give a little bit of history about how we got here. This is the 6th large annexation I've worked on in the last, in as many years for King County. So I know a little bit about how we've got here. Sometimes it can seem confusing. All of a sudden we're talking about annexation.
Can you speak up a bit?
Sure. So, yeah, thank you. So, real quick, the Washington State Legislature passed the Growth Management Act in 1990, and they did that because they felt like uncoordinated, unplanned growth wasn't resulting in a community that residents really wanted. So they passed the Growth Management Act to help coordinate that a little bit, but because we're such an independent community, state, they pushed a lot of the planning, instead of doing it centrally in Olympia, they pushed it onto the counties and the cities and the residents to get together and talk about how do you want to grow? What do you want to look like? And so the county and the cities and residents put together these growth plans called comprehensive plans. And the county got together with cities when areas like yours started to get really urban, right? We used to be a pretty rural community, and said, okay, these neighborhoods are getting pretty dense and urban. Which of you cities, that border them, how are you envisioning your growth to happen? Let's talk with citizens about where they want to go. And so the cities claimed these areas like yours as their potential annexation areas. You guys are lucky, you got 2 cities to claim you, Seattle and Burien. And so for the last several years, we've all been talking together about how annexation might happen and what kind of options we could put forward to you that you could consider so that you could make a decision about where your future home is. This is kind of a bad map, but it's on our website, and I certainly can get anyone copies if you want. Even though we tried to coordinate our planning and our growth, it didn't quite work out that way. We kind of ended up with a Swiss cheese map of some pretty large unincorporated areas like North Highline. And the biggest of them was Kirkland, which was over 30,000 people, and I think the smallest is in Renton, about 10,000 people. So as you can see, these blue areas, some of them have been colored purple because those annexations have been completed. They're completely surrounded by cities, and they're super dense neighborhoods. And the county has been really struggling to serve you, to come out to these areas, this patchwork of communities, and try to serve you. You know, our roads facilities in Renton, our parks, facilities are in SeaTac. The sheriff's office has several places that they deploy from, and so we're struggling to serve you. Counties and cities are also a creation of the state, and counties were created to provide regional and rural services, and we have an appropriate mix of taxes to do that. And cities were designed to provide local services, and they have an appropriate mix of taxes to do that, because local services require more of a, how should I say, when you become a dense urban neighborhood, you need a higher level of service than you do if you're living out on a farm in Enumclaw. And so that's how we got to this place of once a neighborhood becomes pretty dense, we need to start thinking about how we can transition you into a governance structure, a municipal government, a city, that is better designed to serve you and has a better tax base to serve you. And they have a lot more flexibility in how they use their money than the county does. A lot of our money is siloed, and there's some good reasons for that, but it doesn't help you when you become a dense neighborhood. So the county decided that we would, once we realized we had this Swiss cheese map, we decided in 2004 we would put together an initiative to really aggressively go out and talk to residents about where you want to go and get people annexed into cities. And we've been successful with 6 annexations now. We've got 6 more to go, area-wise, one of them. And Burien stepped forward and said, we really want to do this. Let's work together to figure it out. And we partnered with them on the annexation of the southern portion of North Highline, and that went really well. And now they're here today courting you guys and saying, we'd like you to become part of our city. I think I talked a little bit about service levels. One of the things that we're struggling with is our service levels, and as Barbara mentioned, I think Rhodes is going to come out and talk to you guys about our tiered service plan that we've quite unfortunately had to move to because we're really struggling. We've cut a lot of money out of our roads budget, and we've laid off a lot of staff, and quite unfortunately we're in a position where we're not able to provide the same level of service on every road within unincorporated King County, and so the roads department has decided to tier their service. And for instance, in North Highline, and there's a map on the website, but I can certainly get one to anyone. Quite unfortunately, the majority of the roads are Tier 5, which is the least robust set of services that they're able to provide. And that is pretty much the story through most of urban, unincorporated King County. Other local services that we've had to cut include all of our local parks funding. We don't have any general fund money that goes to local parks anymore. Right now we're struggling to fund our maintenance of local parks by using money that we generate through some creative advertising partnerships in regional parks like Marymore, and we're funneling that money to try and keep the parks open. Community planning services, we haven't had that in, my goodness, over a decade. We don't even have the resources to talk to you about how do you want to grow and what do you want to look like. We don't even have community planners anymore. There's a lot of examples of that. Lastly, I would say that I think that this plan that the legislature came up with, the Growth Management Act, it really makes sense. You know, cities, that's all they do is provide local services to their residents. That's what they were designed to do. They do it really well. The county, we're struggling to be this regional resource and provide local services into these areas that have grown up, right? So our focus, we're trying to do both, and we're not doing that real well. So our focus is on providing, you know, we run the regional jail, we run, you know, the public health system where we inspect restaurants, we run the court system. We've got, you know, we house juvenile offenders and adult offenders. There's all these examples of these regional services that we were designed to provide and that we are trying to fund, and we're trying to do that really well. And we're also trying to serve these dense urban neighborhoods that we weren't designed to serve. So I think this discussion is appropriate, and it's great that everyone's here tonight. And I'm gonna stop talking and let some of the folks here talk, and certainly am available for any questions that anyone has.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Senator Sarah Nelson is up next.
Thank you. I've actually been working on the annexation issue for a number of years. I was Dow's chief of staff, and I know I met many of you in that capacity before I served you in the House and now in the Senate. The Growth Management Act, as Karen mentioned, is a driver in this. What it indicates is in the planning for counties and for cities, the most appropriate place for an urban growth area, which is what North Highline Area Y is today, is in a city. I received an email that, is this an absolute that it has to happen? It is definitely guidance in that statute that that is the best location. And when you go to King County's comprehensive plan, it is clear what the county is saying in their planning under that act is that they want to transition these urban growth areas, and there were 12, there are now 6, into cities where there is a better level of service and a more appropriate local government component. That is the guiding factor in the annexation. At the state level, the county came to us and said, this is difficult. We've got Renton, we've got Kirkland, we've got Burien, we've got Seattle. They want to take a look at these annexation areas, but they're struggling. And we went ahead and did the local sales tax, the annexation sales tax credit, in an effort to help our cities being able to take the new communities on. They came back and said, North Highline is unique. It has extensive needs. And we went ahead and increased the sales tax credit if 2 cities in a county of the size of King County were vying for an annexation area. That was specifically carved out for North Highline. There is only one community that fits. And we were doing it to help either Seattle or Burien at that point in time. It looked like both might be trying to annex. Seattle ultimately decided not to go forward. Burien has. That credit expires January 1, 2015. That is, I would call it, the state carrot that we've given to the cities to go ahead and annex the areas. What happens after that would depend on who's in the legislature and how we move forward. It was a struggle to ask the state to give up 0.85% of our sales tax, even though we all recognized North Highline needed it. So that is where the state component comes in. In looking at that chapter, there was a question that was given to me, well then does Burien have to expend everything and then go in and get reimbursed? It's pretty clear, and I've talked to staff, that that is not the case. Department of Revenue can actually help in this situation, is directed in that act to help the city, and can do so. The one thing in there is if you get to the $5 million cap, which is the maximum the city could get under this annually, and you go over that, of course the credit stops that year, and then it starts all over the next year. So the maximum will be $5 million. And of course Burien has done a study on that. But the guidance from the Growth Management Act is it should go forward. I take a look at it, and one thing I would ask all of you, because I'm not lobbying one way or the other, is take a look at Area X. You might want to talk to your neighbors. You might want to talk to folks in other annexation areas like Panther Lake. My mother lives there. Her level of services, I have to tell you, from Kent have improved. She's in a senior mobile home park. And as far as taking a look at your options, talk to folks who've gone through the annexation process and see what the pros and cons for them were. No, it doesn't have to happen today. I do believe that is the direction the state will continue to push, and we will be working with King County. As Karen mentioned, you've got pockets all over. The annexation issue has been around for a number of years. The state is trying to help with the local sales tax option. We really became engaged and want to help whatever city is going to take you. But the level of services under the Growth Management Act, it's clear, are better provided by a city. And even when I was at the county, it has been ongoing, always struggling with these pockets that need more services. The counties were designed for regional services, as Karen mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to add a little thing for people. We do, after the meeting, I don't want to forget, we do have some voter registration forms up here if anyone hasn't registered to vote, there's still time. And we have up next, Mike Martin, Burien City.
Thank you. So there are these two cannibals eating lunch, and one says to the other, "I hate that city manager." The other one says, "Well, try the salad." I was a little, it was kind of dislocating to have somebody applaud after, felt like I had to get that out. Jan went in the back of the room there, and I've been to, I don't know, 6 of these, 7 of these in recent months. And so we generally kind of know we know what people are interested in, and we generally find that our best strategy is to answer questions. But I'm just going to give you some kind of general facts, and these are things that we know to be true, despite what you may have heard in other venues, and I'm just going to say them, and I'm glad to take questions afterwards. So I'm going to start really kind of a very high level and assume that you don't know anything, although I know I can see probably 2/3 of the crowd are what I think of as annexation veterans, and probably know this at least as well as I do. So is everybody clear on the area that we're annexing? We have a map over here, and generally everything north of 116th down here, 112th, this blue area down here is Burien, Roxbury, and Seattle's up here. So everything kind of in between and over to 99. There are a couple of little areas over here that we're not involved in. Tuckwillow talking Seattle about those things right now. The population of Burien right now is about 47,000. This annexation would add another 18 to 20, depending on how you count it and when. So we'd become a city of about 65,000. This question will be answered by voters only in the annexation area, so the voters in the city of Burien don't vote on this. Anybody who's registered can vote, but this is left up to this community. Burien is a city that is governed by 7 council members and mayors selected from among the council members. They're in charge of the big picture policy. The city manager, that's me, is in charge of daily operation. I work for the city council. They tell me what to do, and I do it. We have a really good brochure here, and I'm not going to read from it or anything, but I wanted to point out, if you on the back of this, there's some really, if you pick one of these up when you go out, on the bottom, really good contact information, both email and there's a phone number here. We're really easy to get a hold of, so if we don't answer your questions or you have something you'd like to know that we didn't talk about tonight, pick this up and call this number or send us an email and we'll get right back to you. The questions we commonly get, one of them is who provides the services? So the city of Burien is kind of the poster child for what's called a contract city, which means that we don't provide many of the services that really older cities traditionally provide. So, for example, we have many, I think 5 or 6 junior taxing districts that provide everything from water to sewer to fire, library, school. None of those things are things that the city provides, and none of those things would change in annexation. So your utilities don't change, your school district doesn't change, nothing of that nature changes. This killed me. One of the things people always ask, and Jan would say this, we always get asked, well, does my address change? Because I guess people use the Seattle address. You can put Timbuktu on your address, it doesn't matter. use a zip code. If you want to think, like if you want people to, if they thought you were in Seattle or if they thought you were somewhere else, you can use whatever address you want. Just use your zip code and your mail and that sort of thing will continue getting to you. What is the financial impact of annexation? So we did a study and it is totally revenue neutral. This can be done in the story. And I'm sorry there's been so much confusion and downright misleading information out there. Fact of the matter is that we have more than ample resources to do this. As Sharon mentioned, we have a very special arrangement in this area. I gave this example last time to kind of floored people. So our first annexation, just north of Burien, what did we get? 14,000 residents. We got a $500,000 sales tax credit. It was supposed to be about $550. It turned out to be about $500, right? So 14,000 residents, $500,000 in annual sales tax credit for each of the next 10 years. This area, 18,000 residents, $5 million. 10 times the amount of the sales tax credit. That's a big deal, and that is radically different than any other annexation area in the county. And the reason for that is just what both Karen and Sharon said. It was recognized that this is an area that really needs to belong to a city for many good reasons, and the state really felt like there were some additional things that had to happen here, and that they really wanted to encourage the area to incorporate, or to annex, that is. So I just wanted to set that straight. There's absolutely no equivocation around the point of whether we can do this or not financially. We can't, period, game over. We have cops and fire here to talk to you about that. We often get asked about zoning. What happens to my house or the commercial district? The short answer is very little. The zoning, we've already done you've seen what we've done in our first annexation, and that was, we didn't do anything for the entire first year. That gave us a chance to get out into the community and talk to people, find out whether they thought the zoning was appropriate in their, where they were living. And we talked to them about what wasn't appropriate or what they thought should be happening there. The classic example was along Ambom. We have, in Burien, allow zoning of up to 24 units per acre. The county had a zoning code of 48 units per acre, right? And so obviously that was going to be very contentious. We went out, we talked to people, and we resolved that. And in most cases, we were able to find a density that the owners felt appropriate with, and we feel like we did a good job on that. The short answer is we don't do anything for about a year. It gives us time to get out and talk to people, and we do talk to people. We try to figure out what it is the community wants, what it is that works with the larger city, and that's what we do. It's pretty rational. There's no hocus pocus about it. It's not done without consulting the community. People talk about property taxes. The county doesn't have a property tax per se that is used the same way we do. They have a road tax. The road tax is slightly higher. We have some fees that are higher or non-existent in the county. When it's all said and done, for the average house in the annexation area, the taxes and fees combined will increase about $140 a year. I've seen numbers out there that were $400, $600 a year. They're untrue. And I don't know how else to put that. We've got solid calculations. We pay people to make these calculations that are responsible, reliable professionals that don't have a dog in this fight. It's $140 a year or less, and that's a fact. We don't assess your property. I mean, we don't go out, the city doesn't come in. Right now, the county assesses all the property. That doesn't change. So the city doesn't go out and say, well, I know your house is worth $200,000 in the county, but we think it's worth $5, and therefore your property taxes are really low. We don't do that. We don't have control over it. It's not our job. It's not within our jurisdiction. We get questions about septic, because a lot of people in this area are on septic. Do you have to go to a sewer district? The answer is no. If your septic system fails and it can't be repaired, then yes. Those things happen occasionally. We see them in Burien, but they're rare. They generally don't happen. If you have a functioning septic system and there's no problems with it, you're good to go. We don't care to get involved in that. We don't have to. Really not our issue. Who maintains streets, alleys, roads? We have a growing public works department. It was one of the things that we've done in recent years. We are growing our public works department. Until the last few years, we relied on the county to do our road work. We now have a maintenance crew that I'm very pleased with, new guys, one gal, They do a great job, they're providing a great level of service, and we're doing a lot more of our own roads now, so we don't have to rely on the county. We get, because we're doing it in-house, we have certain efficiencies that we can bring to bear on that, and that's a good thing. How would annexation affect public parks? So generally, we take over parks. This is an item that we'll be negotiating with the county, about timing, what we take over, how it's taken over. We have an exceptional facility here with the Steve Cox Park. I bring my little girl here almost every Sunday. It's a wonderful facility. It's a regional facility. It's funded with regional taxes. We expect that to continue. It's one of the many things on my list of things that I'll be talking over with the county if the annexation goes forward, about how that transition occurs, when, who funds it, where the money comes from, and all that sort of thing. We would anticipate, though, that in the main, the parks would become City of Burien parks. We took over, I think, 6 in what we think of as North Burien. We made modest improvements in them. We went out and we cleared brush, we put up signs, we fixed park benches. We were very happy to be able to do some improvements at Puget Sound Park with some community development block grants. We're very happy about that. We have some other ideas about some things we can do in those areas. We don't have enough parks, and we need to do more about figuring that out, and that's a very high priority for my council, particularly in the northeast part of the city, and so that remains a high priority for us. We already talked about how the city is governed. We talked about the population, who votes, taxes, addresses, and that sort of thing. I had a great question. It was kind of one of those consolidating moments where I go through all these things and I say, your utilities change, by and large, the services that you rely on every day, and I haven't talked about police, and I'm going to let Carl do that, and the fire likewise. But when you turn on the lights, when you turn on the tap, the schools that your kids go to, none of that changes. So what changes? Why would you bother to do this? The answer that I've given that's resonated in some of these other forums is some of you here will recall the debacle that occurred shortly before the last annexation when Puget Sound Park was sold not once, not twice, but 3 times. Affordable housing, fire station, library. And in each of those cases, the City of Burien, we hadn't quite annexed it yet. We knew we were going to, or we hoped to. And I can say that were it not for aggressive intervention, any one of those options might have occurred. And I think advocacy is something that that we really feel proud of. We punch above our weight. People listen to us. We're thought of as being responsible. We have a very strong council. They have very divergent opinions, but at the end of the day, they generally make really good decisions, and I'm proud of that. So good representation, advocacy, you have a voice. And I think that's something, it's a phenomenon I've discovered in the unincorporated area. I don't think people fully realize what it means to be able to envision something and then have a mechanism of making that happen. And I think that's a product of having been unincorporated for all these years, and you're a very small part of a very big agency. And I'm not saying you're neglected or anything like that. I'm just saying that when 18,000 people join a city of 45,000, you have a voice. And the council members are attentive to that. I'm attentive to that. The cards that I hand out have my direct line on them, not a secretary's card, a voicemail or something like that. So we're infinitely accessible. Focus. If you look at downtown Burien, Burien was, we consider the unincorporated area to have been an extension of Burien 20 years ago. This city is only 19 years old. It'll be 20 years old in February, right? Sea change in 20 years. That is because there were people, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. More chairs. That gets to probably the most important thing. Since its earliest times, the city of Burien incorporated around. We hated the 3rd runway. We didn't like some of the zoning that the county was imposing on us. And there were a few other things the city didn't like. They came together and they said, no, this is what we want to be. And then they really cleaved that vision for all these years. And you see that in Burien today. You see that. And there's no reason that that can't happen in White Center, Boulevard Park, any of these, top hat. And it's gonna happen. It's about control. And it's about having a vision, it's about articulating a vision, and having a means of implementing that vision, and having people that will advocate for that vision. And when I know all of those things sound really vague, but if you look at Burien, you will see the fruits of that. That's 20 years of concerted effort in pursuing a vision. And there's a big vision up here. There's something very important and substantial that can happen and should happen. It's overdue. And I think we are accessible. We're committed to listening to people. We take that very seriously. I take it very seriously. My council takes it very seriously. And I would say that's our best pitch. And while I'm at it, I would like to acknowledge that we haven't quite established a public meeting here today, but we have Mayor Brian Bennett, we have Deputy Mayor Rose Clark, we have Councilmember Bob Edker, and I think that's kind of it. So I'll be glad to take questions after others speak here.
All right, thank you, Mike. And then we have Fire Chief Mike Myers. Thank you.
Stand up here. Fire Chief Mike Mars, and I actually, as Mike said, am part of a special purpose district, so it's actually King County Fire District number 2, and we have 2 cities. We have the city of Normandy Park and the city of Burien that are annexed into our fire district, and so therefore by the application of the law, anything that they annex automatically becomes our responsibility. And so since November of this year, District 2 and District 11 North Highline Fire Department signed an agreement whereby I became the chief of North Highline also. And so we actually, chief of more or less 3 jurisdictions almost. That contract was for several reasons, but a lot because of budget issues, because of on both sides, and the ability to try to consolidate those efforts and continue to provide the level of service that we want to try to provide in all of the communities. So that's been going on. All of the administration of Burien is responsible for North Highline. So it's not just my services, it's actually the entire Burien staff. Burien Normandy Park is contracted for the administration. If annexation goes through, if Burien annexes the area, the application of the state law means that anything they annex automatically becomes our responsibility. It's already our responsibility to administer it now, so we would continue that responsibility. If annexation does not go through, then the 2 districts, the contract I believe runs through July of 13 or November of 13, I have to go back and look. There's some re-up clauses and some automatic re-ups, but the contract for administration goes through at least July of 2013, at which time certainly the vote will have happened and we'll know which direction the community is going to go, and the 2 districts would have to sit down and figure out, is it going to remain an unincorporated small fire district? Are they going to continue contracting with us for administration, or would they look at some other kind of option? So that's where the fire options are. Right now, we currently in the 2 fire districts, North Highline and Burien Normandy Park, we run 4 stations. Station 19, which is over on 128 just off Des Moines Way, actually is in the city of Burien right now. As part of the contract that we have with North Highline, we lease that back to them for I believe $1 a year. And worth every penny of it. And we actually they run their fire trucks out of that station and provide service not only to the unincorporated area, but because of the contract and the response areas, they're coming into Burien, as well as our fire engines and 8 cars come into North Highline to back up. So it's pretty much business as usual as it's been for 70, 80 years in this community as far as the fire districts. The boundary lines have changed and the jurisdiction names have changed, but the overall station locations and the areas that we serve have remained the same. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
We're going to do it at the end.
Okay, yeah,
Questions at the
when
end.
we're done.
All right. Good. So,
I know you have a commitment to get to, so it's not a big hurry.
you say your piece, and I'll hope to answer any questions that come up from what you say.
Sure. Those of you that, by the way, you notice that I'm standing against the wall like cops do. Good evening. My name is Steve Strand. I'm the sheriff, and I'm glad to be here tonight. One of the things that Carl wanted me to come and talk a little bit about that he would have a little harder time answering is the answer to the question, what would happen if the annexation does not occur in terms of law enforcement presence and law enforcement coverage in White Center? And the answer to that question, and first of all, you should know that when I was the chief in Kent, I was the chief in Kent before I came to the sheriff's office, and we went through the Panther Lake annexation, which was a slightly different scenario because we went from one police department, from the sheriff's office to the Kent Police Department, which are separate. So in other words, sheriff's office moved out, Kent Police Department moved in. It's a very different scenario. In this one, I think most of you know this, but just to make it very clear, Burien is our contract partner. So Carl Cole works for the King County Sheriff's Office. He's a captain of the King County Sheriff's Office. He's also the assistant chief for the Burien Police Department. And he reports to Scott Kimmer, a member of the King County Sheriff's Office, who reports to the City Council and to Mr. Martin. So they are our partners. So what that means in effect is, if the decision is made to annex into Burien, your police department becomes a Burien Police Department, which is basically the same people you have now. They put on different uniforms, they will wear the patch of Burien Police Department, and you may or may not have more, depending on the decisions Burien makes about staffing. The answer to the question, what happens if you vote, if the vote is determined to be no, and you do not annex in? The reality is, and I'm not going to stand here and say that your staffing is going to go down. We are very committed to keeping it at least where it is. And I realize that's not as high as we all wish it were. And as you know, we've had a lot of resource cuts over the last several years because of some of the things that Karen talked about. But the reality is, I will tell you this, that we are certainly committed to keeping it at least where it is. We would like to raise it. I can't guarantee we will. We're talking about some changes in deployment in the rest of the county and some of the changes we've made. We are hiring right now for unincorporated because of some of the changes we've made. So I'm not going to tell you it will go down. I believe it will stay at least where it is. Hopefully we'll be able to increase it, but I don't know that we will. But I can say out loud that I think that we will keep it where it is, and we're committed to keeping the storefront officer. So that's a fact. So.
All right, well, I was asked by your leadership to come here and talk about what is the current state of policing in White Center and what it would look like if the annexation vote is yes. I'm in a unique position to do that because I became the assistant chief of Burien right after the first annexation in 2010, and I took about a 4 or 5 months break off earlier this year to work with the sheriff's office and design the deployment strategy that we've implemented since then. We call it the zone deployment strategy. And then I came back to home, so to Burien. So I understand in pretty high detail both sides of the coin there, and so I will tell you what I know, and hopefully it'll be illuminating for you. So right now, the way we staff White Center, we actually have an unincorporated pool of deputies that is responsible for staffing Vashon Island, White Center, Skyway. Okay? So what that basically works out to is we have a 4-car minimum between White Center and Skyway. We don't really count Vashon because you have to take a boat to get there, so it's not very useful for us to back each other up or have people come off Vashon. So Skyway and White Center has a 4-car minimum. The problem we have right now, and the sheriff mentioned we're hiring, is that we don't have enough people to meet a 4-car minimum, and so we end up doing a lot of that staffing on overtime. And I only mention that because that overtime is available to every deputy in the county. So you may have someone that normally works Kenmore working in White Center, or someone that normally works, in Enumclaw working in White Center. And that's important. That's important to people when you look at the concept of community policing. And so that is a fact, and so I wanted you guys to be aware of that. White Center enjoys the services of B.J. Myers as a storefront officer, and technically also owns a third of Jerry Meyer, the Boulevard Park storefront officer. So I look at that at 1.33. I'm kind of a numbers guy, so it has to look on a spreadsheet. So I only get a third of Jerry in White Center. Because of the way the contract models are designed, the investigations, the property crimes investigations in White Center, we have 2 detectives that are responsible for Vashon Island, White Center, Skyway, and what we call the George side, which is the unincorporated area between Auburn and Federal Way. So those 2 detectives cover all 4 of those areas. Just to give you some perspective, before the economic problems we've all been having, say up to 3 years ago, there were 4 detectives responsible for White Center and Skyway. So now we have 2 responsible for White Center, Skyway, Vashon, and the George sides, just to give you an idea of how things have gone, which I'm sure you noticed. We also have 2 street crimes detectives that are assigned, those are our undercover drug type folks that are assigned to, and they cover the same 4 areas, Vashon Island, White Center, Skyway, and the George side. And we also have 3 gang unit detectives that primarily spend most of their time in the White Center area, White Center area, but they're actually a county-wide asset, and that includes any incorporated city. They work closely with anybody's having a gang problem county-wide. But I point that out because they are a resource that is in White Center. And then the other thing that you have to be aware of is we have implemented a policy of alternative patrol response. So any unincorporated portion of King County between the hours of 2 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock in the morning have a reduced response to non-in-progress calls. So if you wake up at 3 in the morning and look out and notice that the window's been broken out of your car and there's dew in it, and it looks like it's been that way for a while, there's a good chance you won't get somebody to come take a look at that until 10 in the morning. So that's a fact, and so I just want to put it out there. So, future state. If Burien goes in the end, obviously we can't just make this stuff up November 6th. So we've been looking at this for a long time, and we've put together a proposed change to the police department to incorporate the annexation if it goes through. And so what we proposed is an additional 12 patrol officers, which will result in an increase in the minimum of 2. Right now, the city of Burien has a minimum of 4, and White Center has a minimum of 2. That's a minimum of 6. That is probably where we'll stay, right in that same range. The difference is they will be dedicated Burien officers, and it won't be necessarily people working on overtime from far off lands. But as far as the actual patrol response, that's probably stay pretty much the same. We're also recommending an increase in our property crimes detectives from the current 4 to 6. So basically, we'd like to keep the 2 detectives that are there now, but instead of them being responsible for Vashon Island, White Center, Skyway, and the George side, they would just be responsible for the city of Burien, which would now include White Center only. We're also proposing an increase in our street crimes, our undercover guys, by 1 detective, so they would go from 3 to 4. But again, that detective would only have responsibility, for city of Burien now. So we're an area that was served by, a half a detective is basically served by 1 full detective. No change to the gang unit is proposed. But another thing that the city of Burien has is we have a thing called a SET team, a special emphasis team, and they do special investigations. I don't know if you saw the very large organized retail theft case that was done last year. We had some people that were shoplifting from all the major grocery store chains to the tunes of millions of dollars. And so they do very specialized technical, they use cameras and trackers, and they're all that fancy stuff. There's 2 detectives and a sergeant in that unit, and we're recommending adding 1 more detective, so there'd be 3 detectives and 1 sergeant. Again, we plan to keep the storefront officers. We're also batting around a couple of different options with Highline School District to either share the current SRO at Highline High School with Evergreen, but the school district has expressed interest in adding an SRO so that there's 1 in each school, which obviously you don't have 1 now. And all specialty services, SWAT, major crimes, MAR unit, Marine unit, all those things, because of the contract relationship, none of that changes. So none of the response from all the specialty, helicopter, all that stuff, nothing changes as far as that goes. And again, Burien does not have a policy of alternative patrol response. So if your car is broken into at 3 o'clock in the morning and you